We want to be perceived in a certain way. We want to be perceived as perfect. We don't want to show our flaws because it's not safe to show our flaws, especially on the internet. And I think also especially as women. I'm holding onto my pen for comfort, my pencil, because I was certain I was gonna skip today. I had already decided I wasn't gonna film a video today because I was not feeling well. I've got back pain and got a pinched nerve, didn't sleep well, la-di-da, brain fog, the whole story. So I had decided already, it was a late afternoon, and I decided I'm not gonna do it. I'm gonna film twice. I'm gonna film 2 in a day on some of the next days. And obviously I always had this as an out because I knew there would come a low point, and I guess I reached it today. But then Frank, my husband, suggested that we go on a walk, and so we've just been out on a walk without the camera, without me feeling the pressure to film myself, and we just had a chat and spent some time by the water and just walking under the trees. And first lesson, if you don't feel well, you never underestimate how much a simple walk in nature is going to help. There is no doubt on my mind that you will always feel better. There is very few things that time spent in nature can at least make it a little bit better. But that's not what I wanted to talk to you about. I actually want to talk to you about this idea of the perfect getting in the way of the good, because I think that's something we all feel at times, that whatever we put out in the world has to be perfect. And this perfection doesn't even necessarily come from the outside world. It's more like it comes from within, it comes from us, and we are holding ourselves to those high standards. Because I think it feels unsafe not to put out our best work. We want to be perceived in a certain way, and we want to be perceived as perfect. We don't want to show our flaws because it's not safe to show our flaws, especially on the internet. And I think also especially as women, there is so much expectation from us to look perfect and to appear approachable, but at the same time also remain mysterious in some way. So there's all these ridiculous, the famous Barbie monologue comes to mind, that you just can't win because there's just so much expectation on your part. And that is why I decided to show up today, because I think the more we hold ourselves to those high standards, the less is ever going to change. So maybe all I want to do in this video today is tell you that you do not need to be perfect, and tell myself that I don't need to be perfect, and that I don't need to provide 100% value every day with these videos. And there's, another thing I remembered on the walk now about what we also perceive as perfect. A lot of people will withhold their work, their creation, something they put out, because they thought it wasn't good enough. But sometimes we can't see clearly. Sometimes we really don't know what will resonate. And a lot of artists will say that, well, it's actually kind of funny that this was the song, or that this was the book, or this was the piece of art that resonated and that got me to fame, because I always thought it was that one that was going to go. That's where my heart and soul is in. That's where I worked the hardest. That's what I worked the hardest for. And so oftentimes we're just wrong. We're just wrong about maybe what the world needs, or what someone out there might need right now. And then it's up to trust. It's up to trust that we're gonna be okay even when we show up on those days when we show up and it's not perfect and it's not 100%. And Suzanne Collins comes to mind. So Suzanne Collins is a notoriously private author who wrote one of the most famous books in modern history, and that's The Hunger Games. So Suzanne Collins never gives any interviews, basically. She's one of the rare exceptions of authors who are not required to have a platform. I guess she kind of got famous before social media anyway, so she's a whole different, she's one of those OGs. She's an entirely different generation. But anyway, so The Hunger Games was the book that got her to her ridiculous fame, right? And one of the few occasions, I think she did an interview once with her agent or her publisher, not even with a journalist, just, they just put out some questions and released them on the website. But she said in that interview the same thing, that she was surprised that The Hunger Games was the book that went, because it kind of came to her off the top of her head. She was watching TV one night and sort of switching between channels, and on the one channel there was news of the war in Iraq, I think it was, and then the other channel was these reality shows, or like, American Idol or whatever, and she was switching between these two channels, and that's how the idea of The Hunger Games came to her, to mix the two. She had these two experiences playing out in her head, and that's how she came up with the book. And so it was a very spontaneous idea that she sort of, I think there is the myth that she wrote this book in like 3 months or something, the first book. And so there was not that much of her heart in that story. In fact, she says the series she wrote before, I think it's called something like The Underworld Chronicles. No, I'm getting this wrong, but there is a series that's set in the sort of beneath New York City in the underworld, and I think there's a lot of rats in there and cockroaches, and it's a bit odd. So I do think that series does have a lot of like loyal fans as well. But my point being that she did not know what would resonate in the end. She was almost as the person, as the creator, as the someone who puts out something into the world. It is almost not up to you what will resonate and what, maybe even what your calling is or what your value is that you bring out. And again, it's probably just up to you to trust that it's safe for you, even if you put something out there and everyone hates it, and even if you show up and people make fun of how you look like, or even if one thing you put out completely tanks and you fail miserably at something, there's also a big lesson in failure. I honestly think this is something that, we struggle with. Failure. No one wants to fail. Again, it doesn't feel safe. It doesn't feel good to fail. There's literally physical pain in failure. But when I look back on my life, nothing has taught me more than my failures. And failures are also a great compass that can steer you in the direction that was actually meant for you. I think it is only a failure if you stop putting yourself out there afterwards. I think human experience shows that there's very little that you can't come back from. Look at, oh my God, I can't think of the name now. I'm going blank. The actor who punched the other actor in the face. Will Smith. Oh my goodness. See, brain fog. I'm not really there today. Look at Will Smith. He did this outrageous thing at the Oscars, and he's fine today. He's fine today. We'll get over it. And if Will Smith can get over that, I think, well, I can get over this video for sure. And I think we can all get over one failure or a misstep or a mistake. And I'm not saying this video is a mistake or whatever. This is literally just me holding myself accountable because it felt worse not doing it, then yeah, actually showing up here now feels fine. And that's literally all I have for you today. I would encourage you to look at your own life and think about where the perfect actually gets in the way of the good or the good enough, and just trust that you're going to be okay, and that it's safe for you to come out here and show yourself. And the more people show up with their imperfections, the more we can dismantle what doesn't actually serve us. And that's it for today. Thank you for watching. Anyone anonymously can just say anything they want about you. And the one thing you need to remember, I'm telling this myself right now, is that it isn't personal. It's not about you. Anything someone else says about you is much more a reflection of what they think about themselves.